Not quite true. So let's look at the numbers. When Biden left office, right, in 2024, there were fewer people coming in than in Donald Trump's last year of office in the first term. That's just a fact. Go look at the numbers.
So Mehdi Hasan recently did an appearance on the Triggernometry podcast, and certain clips from this podcast are going viral related to a whole host of topics. However, one of the ones that caught my attention was this exchange on the issue of illegal immigration into the United States of America, because Mehdi just blatantly lies to the two hosts, lies to their face, and these are such obvious lies that a superficial knowledge of a U.S. immigration policy from the time periods that Mehdi Hasan is referencing would indicate that he is a total nonsense talker. And again, a perfect example of that is the clip that I played at the open for you, where Mehdi makes the case that during the last year of Trump's administration, immigration was higher than the first year of Biden's administration. But this is just objectively false. And again, you can look at the numbers for yourself. But more importantly than that, this is false because of Title 42, which was initiated by Trump during the COVID pandemic during March of 2020, which dramatically reduced the amount of people who are eligible to cross the United States border due to the fact that we had a pandemic. And the crazy thing about this is that Mehdi actually acknowledges this earlier on in the conversation, says that he was against it. We should let people invade our country during a pandemic without even testing them. That's the position that Mehdi has.
For the first year of their administration, they kept the same rule that Trump used under the pandemic to just kick people out, which was a nonsense rule.
And the thing is, none of this should be surprising to any of us, because Mehdi Hasan is an immigrant himself. He came from the UK. His family's of Indian origin. He's an Islamic immigrant. He also works for Al Jazeera. And for some ridiculous reason, because we have these visas that are supposedly for uniquely talented individuals, Mehdi Hasan was able to get accelerated United States citizenship, despite the fact that he works for a foreign nation's propaganda outlet, and again, is paid to do propaganda to undermine the United States of America. That is Al Jazeera's goal. We see that time and time again in their coverage, and yet this guy is treated like he's not a foreign agent when that's exactly what he is. So this is what we're going to talk about today. This is what we're going to discuss. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
We have to admit that there have been fundamental failings on the left. For instance, the border, having an open border.
There's no open border, Francis. Where's the open border?
Well, Trump has closed it, but before there was an open border.
It wasn't. What's your definition of an open border?
Well, you
millions of illegals coming in.
That doesn't mean it's open. That just means they managed to come in illegally. That just means the border wasn't as secure as you wanted it to be.
Hold on a second.
Open border means I could just walk into America. Nobody could do that.
Well, hold on. If millions of people are able to walk into my house, and I say, I've got an open door policy to my house, you go, that's not an open door policy. It just means people got in. I mean, come on.
No, I'm being very serious.
So first, this conversation starts off with Mehdi Hasan trying to nitpick and haggle against the definition of an open border. But the thing is, we all understand when we see record border crossings under a certain administration, by the way, an administration that wanted people to surge to the border. Let me play that clip from Joe Biden right here, right off the rip, so you guys can know exactly what I'm talking about.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
Then yes, this is what we're referring to as an open border. And by the way, you could see the charts where hundreds of thousands of people were coming to the border. A lot of them were committing asylum fraud. And in fact, the Biden administration was aiding and abetting in that they had that CBP One app that actually allowed people to use an app that was previously for inspecting cargo, where you'd fill out surveys in advance in order to enter the country. And by the way, these asylum fraudsters, they would be given court dates that were something like 7 to 10 years out, again, guaranteeing that they would be in this nation for a lengthy period of time. And by the way, they also undid a bunch of other Trump administration policies that were put in place in order to address these ridiculous fraudulent asylum claims. Because what was happening in the Trump administration, and we're talking about the first one, is that you have a period of time where a bunch of people decided that they were going to show up to the border, turn their themselves into CBP, and they were going to say, listen, we're actually asylum seekers. We learned from this NGO in order to say the correct words, so we demand a court date. We demand that we be admitted and paroled into your country. And the Trump administration was like, wait a minute, you ended up coming from Guatemala, or you ended up coming from Colombia, or you ended up coming from Ecuador, which means that you've passed through multiple different countries in order to get to the United States of America, which means you should have been able to claim asylum there. And this is when Trump instituted probably one of the most intelligent immigration policies that he ever instituted, which was called Remain in Mexico. And by the way, Mehdi Hasan acknowledges this existed. He acknowledges that the Biden and Harris administration ended up removing this, and yet he says, oh, there was no open border. In fact, enforcement was way too strict under the Biden administration. Only millions of people ended up flooding into this nation. Only millions of people ended up on the taxpayer dole in major metropolitan areas. That's a problem with the border just being way too secure, in Mehdi's humble opinion, which again is a part of this game where Mehdi says nobody's in favor of open borders. Open borders isn't a thing, but you know what we really definitely should have? Open borders.
The moment Donald Trump was elected, he closed the window.
Well, he closed it completely, which is ridiculous because now you can't even claim asylum, which is a legal right. Joe Biden actually deported more people than Trump did in his first term. He actually detained and deported.
So this is a statistical trick that the Democrats often use, and they use it in order to make the case that Trump is somehow ineffective in his border policy. Now, first and foremost, all we need to do is look at the charts where we can see the crossings of the border under Trump 2 versus the Biden administration, and what you see is there's obviously way more crossings under Biden than there were under Trump. Now, why does this matter? Why is this absolutely crucial in addressing the statistics that Mehdi Hasan has manipulated and brought into this conversation? Well, the reason this matters is because the United States of America has a procedure that is called or referred to as expedited removal. And what this essentially means is that if you come to the border and you end up trying to cross the border and they catch you, they can remove you without sending you before a judge, without giving you a court date or anything of the sort if they use this administrative procedure. Now, these, in terms of the stats, actually end up counting as deportations. So essentially, if you allow millions of people to show up to the border, but use expedited removal on 100,000 of them, then guess what? You will stack up your deportation numbers against any administration, which is one of the reasons why Barack Obama had such high deportation numbers, even though, again, once you got into the country, you were pretty much here. And this is why we've seen case after case of criminal with deportation orders that date back decades not actually being able to be deported. And in fact, we've had lengthy court battles over these illegal aliens that, again, were not supposed to be here and had a judge order their removal for years because it's obviously much more difficult to deport people once they're in the interior of the country. By the way, this is the reason why that surge to the border policy is so disastrous. Paroling these illegal aliens into the interior of the country, absolutely stupid. But again, Mehdi Hasan wants to duck all of this context so that he could say, actually, Joe Biden, very right-wing on immigration. Actually, pay no attention to the fact that Joe Biden said during the campaign for people to surge to the border if they're seeking asylum because that's who we are.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
Because if you did notice that, and then you did notice all the different people who surged to the border to claim asylum because that's who America is, you might think that there's a connection between those two policies, and Mehdi Hasan, the foreign operative, absolutely does not want you to be able to see that.
Joe Biden was not some dove on the border. Biden and Harris put together the most draconian border security legislation, which, by the way, Trump told Republicans not to vote for because he wanted more people to come in so he could win the election. But they put together, I'm on the left. I was criticizing Biden and Harris for being hawks.
So again, this is another rewrite of history that does not acknowledge the true numbers as they are right now. So that 2024 border bill, which again, no coincidence that it was put together in the final year of the Biden administration, almost as if that when there was an election issue, the Democrats pretended to get serious about it, actually permitted anywhere between 5,000 and 8,500 daily illegal border crossings in the nation before triggering the president's ability to declare an emergency on on that particular issue. Now today, without that bill passing, the daily border crossings, and again, you can look this up for yourself, average about 258 per day. So significantly lower than what was put forward in that supposedly draconian border bill that again was about normalizing high rates of illegal immigration. Now obviously you're going to put an upward cap on it, but of course it was about the Biden administration saying, hey, we are addressing that, and the Trump team knew that that was a cheap political win that they were going to try to wield against the evil bad orange man. And when that bill ended up failing in the Senate, guess what? They ended up saying, oh, Trump is flooding the United States of America with illegal aliens, the man who's not in office, and Mehdi is still repeating that talking point. But the fact is, you can look at the numbers for yourself, 258, significantly lower. We're talking 5% of the low cap of what was allowed daily to enter this country. And yeah, that's what the Trump administration achieved by enforcing current border laws, by enforcing current existing laws that Mehdi Hasan is against. But he's trying to say it's a wash. Biden way too strict, Biden way too conservative, because again, Mehdi is a foreign propagandist that wants us to destroy ourselves through mass migration.
Biden left office, right, in 2024. There were fewer people coming in than in Donald Trump's last year of office in the first term. That's just a fact. Go look at the numbers. The trends were down. You've got to look at trends. Clearly, there was a peak. I'm not disputing that.
Okay.
In 21, 22, huge peak. I was at MSNBC. We covered it all the time.
Now, I do like in this clip version of the Triggernometry podcast that they actually end up putting the chart on screen to show that Mehdi Hasan is lying directly to their faces while they're on air, while they're on this show. But the fact is that they should have called him out live for this, because obviously this was a lie. And again, it was a lie just based on Title 42, which should have made it absolutely clear that yes, Biden, who encouraged people to surge to the border, because that's who we are, definitely opened up the border.
But the point is, if it was an open border, why didn't they stay? Why didn't it stay up? Why did it come down?
Because they realized it's a problem and they were trying to
So
deal
then
with
we
it.
agree there wasn't an open border.
Now again, this is all somebody like Mehdi Hasan has, because he is doing this little trick where he's like, well, at some point in time, when it became politically expedient, the Democrats began signaling that they were actually really into closing the border, which again was a hilarious aspect of the 2024 campaign, because they basically nuked Biden's campaign, installed Kamala Harris, who in fact was the border czar, which by the way, they were trying to gaslight us into thinking that she wasn't the border czar, that wasn't her project. But suddenly, when the issue was really inconvenient, they started making the case that the evil bad orange man was actually for open borders, which again was patently absurd and ridiculous, and of course has since reversed yet again, now that the evil bad orange man has taken office. But Mehdi Hasan thinks that he could just pull the wool over your eyes. He thinks that he could just lie to these individuals, and unfortunately they didn't catch him on this, but the overall sentiment they know is wrong, and this is why they're pushing back so hard against him.
No, there was an open border.
Okay, for 1 year, they were really bad at border security. Yes,
and
let's
then-
concede that.
Okay.
Again, this is the kind of haggling that a scumbag like Mehdi Hasan tries to do, and you shouldn't let him get away with it, because as you can see by the charts, it is not 1 year, it is not a brief moment, it was through the entirety of the Biden presidency. Again, this was something that he campaigned on, and they only thought about potentially reversing it a little bit when Biden was up for re-election, which ended up transferring to Kamala Harris, who was up for re-election, and they realized that this was a losing issue for their presidential campaign. Had they won, had they gotten away with this, they would have cranked that number right back up, allowed more people to be admitted to the United States of America, because there's a belief among folks in the Democratic Party that their future electoral prospects are dependent on importing a bunch of these illegal migrants to the United States of America, who even if they don't eventually get the ability to vote, one, their kids will have the ability to vote, but in addition to that, they end up counting in terms of apportionment for congressional representation, which will allow the Democrats to maintain power as their bleeding population in Democratic stronghold.
I'm on the left. So when you say the left failed, you might not like this, the no true Scotsman fallacy. The left hasn't been in power, right? And Tony Blair was not the left. Gordon Brown was not the left. David Cameron and George Osborne were not the left.
You can't play this game.
I can, because I criticize them from the left. If you tell me that there was an open border, I would say Tony Blair spent his whole life being hawkish on border. He gave asylum seekers vouchers. I spent most of the 2000s attacking Blair.
Now, of course, Mehdi ends up doing the no true Scotsman thing, and he thinks he can get away with it because he calls it out as he's going to do it. But essentially, the case he's trying to make is like, look, I'm the real left. I'm the real left, and you know that because I'm foreign funded and I promote jihadi terrorism, and a lot lot of the people in the Democratic Party don't go as far as me. Therefore, since I can criticize you from the left, since I can critique you for not letting in enough people from the third world, that means you're not on the left, so everybody's on the right. And this is the mentally deranged perspective that many leftists have in the United States of America and, of course, across the Western world. But obviously, the mass migration is a left-wing policy. It was pushed by the Democratic Party. They allowed these people to come in. Biden campaigned on it. Let me play that clip just one more time.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
And it absolutely happened. And no third worlder, no terrorist supporter, no guy who works for a foreign media outlet meant to propagandize in the United States of America should ever be able to fool you on this issue, because you saw it for yourself. You saw the panic in the blue cities. You saw the absolute disaster that those open borders policies ended up leading to. And essentially Mehdi Hasan's argument that literally everyone didn't come into the United States of America during that period of time does not hold water. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny, and it's ridiculous in every way. Now, of course, I will leave the question up to you guys out there in the audience, because maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you think Mehdi Hasan is exactly right, and you don't remember what happened more than a couple of years ago in this nation. You don't remember the disaster of the border, all these different NGOs bringing people into the country, the Biden administration flying these people into all these different places under the cover of night in order to bring them into communities. And you just think, you know what, Mehdi, the foreign propagandist, the guy who works for Al Jazeera, absolutely dead on right. We should have open borders. We didn't really have open borders because real open borders has never been tried. Again, all your thoughts down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Mehdi Hasan being a liar, lying. Till next time.